The day before our company merger. You need to know the truth about your partner, a stranger warned. When I demanded answers. The whole mess started with a Facebook message. My name is Nico, and I'm 42. I live in San Francisco, the so-called city of innovation and tech dreams, and I work as a senior manager at a small but promising tech firm. After nearly 2 decades of all-nighters, missed vacations, and the grind of clawing my way up, the company was about to sign a major merger that would change everything. I'd finally have stability, financial security, and maybe, just maybe, the freedom to think about something other than survival. But, if you've ever dealt with family, you know they have this special radar. They seem to sniff out the exact moment your life is on the brink of something big, then bam. They show up, piling on drama with the subtlety of a brick to the face. My family. Well, they're a handful. My mom, Teresa, is the sort who thinks family loyalty means do whatever I say and don't question it. She's all about appearances and making sure everything looks just perfect, even when it's all about to implode. My dad, Carlo, he's a quiet guy, too quiet maybe, content to let my mom steer the ship straight into an iceberg if it means less confrontation. Then there's my older brother, Marcelo, he's a total piece of work. To him, life's a casino, and every choice is a roll of the dice. He's been kicked out of so many business ventures it's hard to keep track, but somehow, he still gets this saintly treatment from everyone in the family. Meanwhile, I'm the responsible, boring one, the workhorse who always did everything right but somehow never quite deserved the same praise. So, when I got that message, the timing was spectacular. It was from a stranger named Mila. All I could see was her profile picture, a woman about my age, her face pale, tight-lipped, a look of intensity in her eyes. Something about her seemed haunted, but at first, I thought it might be some scam. Hi, Nico. I don't know how to say this, but you need to know the truth about your partner before the merger. He's not who he says he is. I stared at my screen, heartbeat pounding in my ears. My partner was Luke, a guy I'd known for nearly 8 years. We'd started as colleagues, survived the chaos of a fledgling company, and eventually built something solid. Luke was sharp, savvy, and I thought I knew him better than anyone. And now, this woman, this total stranger, was telling me he wasn't who he claimed to be? I hesitated. Part of me was tempted to ignore it, brush it off as some troll trying to mess with me. But another part, maybe the part of me that never quite trusted anyone completely, was screaming to dig deeper. I messaged her back. Mila, I'm going to need more than cryptic warnings. What's this really about? Her reply came faster than I expected. I know Luke better than you think. We were married 10 years ago. He left me in debt, nearly ruined me. You're about to go into business with a man who has no problem leaving destruction in his wake. Don't say I didn't warn you. The floor seemed to fall out from under me. I blinked at the screen, my stomach lurching. Married? Luke had never mentioned a wife, let alone a past as dark as she was implying. Still, a part of me clung to reason. People have baggage, right? Maybe she was exaggerating. So, I decided to give Luke a chance to explain himself. That night, after hours, I went to his office and knocked on the door. Hey, he greeted me, looking up with a weary smile. What's up? Big day tomorrow. Got the jitters? Not exactly. I walked in, shut the door behind me. I got a message from someone. A woman named Mila. The color drained from his face. Luke froze, every muscle in his body going rigid. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on him before, a mix of fear and anger. Where did you hear that name? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. She messaged me on Facebook. Said she was your ex-wife. Said you left her in debt, hurt her. Luke. Is there something I should know? For a moment, he was silent, just staring at the floor. Then he let out a long sigh, leaning back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Nico, listen to me, he started, voice strained. Mila is complicated. Yes, we were married, but it was a long time ago. She's not well. She's obsessed with dragging me down. Anything she's told you, she's twisting the truth. But why would she come out of nowhere and message me now, right before the merger? I pressed, unwilling to let him off the hook. Why would she go to all that trouble?
Luke's eyes flickered, and for the briefest second, I saw something darker there, something I hadn't seen in all the years I'd known him.
Because, he said slowly, carefully choosing his words, she doesn't want to see me succeed. If I do well, she loses the only leverage she has. It's her way of trying to ruin me, even after all these years. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something didn't sit right. You've been my partner for almost a decade, Luke. And you never thought to mention any of this? He laughed, hollowly. Would you? It was a dark time, Nico. I'm not proud of it. I moved on. Started over. I left his office that night feeling uneasy. Part of me wanted to chalk it up to a troubled past. Everyone's got skeletons, right? But this wasn't just some small slip-up. We were about to merge with a multi-million-dollar company, and if Luke had any secrets, they could torpedo everything. The next morning, I woke up to find about a dozen missed calls from my mom. I sighed, knowing they could only mean one thing: trouble. I picked up the phone, bracing myself. "Hey, Ma. What's going on?" Her voice was tight, clipped. "Your brother needs your help. He's gotten himself into some legal trouble." I groaned internally. "What happened this time?" "He's been, investing," she said, her voice dripping with that forced calm she always used when she was hiding something. "It didn't go as planned." "You mean he got scammed again?" I replied, irritation bubbling up. "Is he asking for money?" "Nico," she scolded, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "You need to stop being so hard on your brother. He's just going through a rough patch." "A rough patch?" I scoffed. "Ma, Marcelo has been going through a rough patch since high school. I'm not bailing him out." "Nico, I'm not asking you. I'm telling you. Family sticks together, remember?" "Family sticks together?" I repeated, the words leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. "Ma, every time Marcelo screws up, you turn to me to clean up the mess. I'm not doing it this time." There was a pause on the other end. When she spoke again, her voice was cold. "Well, not everyone can be the golden boy, can they? You've always thought you were too good for us, Nico. Maybe it's time you learned that family doesn't just mean helping when it's easy." Before I could respond, she hung up, leaving me seething. That afternoon, Mila showed up at the office. I was just coming out of a meeting when I saw her, standing by the lobby doors, a look of determination on her face. My stomach dropped. I didn't need this. Not today. I made a beeline for her, trying to keep my voice low. "Mila, what are you doing here?" She looked at me with that same haunted intensity. "Nico, you don't know who you're dealing with. Luke. He's dangerous. I've tried to warn you." I wanted to tell her to leave, to let me handle my own problems, but the desperation in her eyes stopped me. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder, shoving it into my hands. "Look at this. Legal documents, police reports. This is who Luke really is. You're about to let him take control of your entire life, Nico. Don't be a fool." I glanced down at the folder, heart pounding. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why now?" "Because I know what he's capable of," she said, her voice trembling. "He ruined my life. Don't let him ruin yours." Before I could respond, she turned and walked away, leaving me holding a stack of papers that could destroy everything. I spent the rest of the day hidden in my office, reading through the folder. The accusations were beyond anything I'd imagined: allegations of fraud, money laundering, even violence. And as I read, I felt my world crumbling. This wasn't just some messy divorce. If even a fraction of this was true, Luke was capable of things I'd never imagined. I felt sick. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, was tied to a man I didn't even know. By the time I finished reading, it was past midnight. I knew what I had to do, but the thought filled me with dread. I closed the folder, took a deep breath, and picked up the phone. "Luke," I said when he answered, his voice groggy. "We need to talk. Now." It was the longest night of my life. I took a long, steadying breath as I waited for Luke to arrive. The office was empty now, the glow of the city outside casting eerie shadows over everything. I'd chosen this late hour deliberately. Whatever came out of this conversation, I wanted it to be private, and I didn't want anyone else getting hurt in the fallout. Half an hour later, Luke walked in, looking disheveled and irritated. He took one look at me and sighed heavily, as though this was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "Nico, what's so urgent that it couldn't wait until morning?" he asked, his tone cold. I held up Mila's folder without a word. For the first time, I saw genuine fear flicker in his eyes. He masked it quickly, but it was too late. I'd seen it, and it told me everything I needed to know. "We're done playing games, Luke," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't just omit some small detail from your past. This is a mountain of accusations, legal filings, police reports. Fraud, violence, and worse. You've been lying to me from day one." He put on a practiced smile, that same smile that had probably fooled countless investors, clients, and friends over the years. "Nico, come on. This is all nonsense. Mila's bitter, she's making things up." I cut him off, slamming the folder onto the table. "Don't insult me, Luke. I've read everything. I've seen the patterns. You used her. You left her with nothing. And now you're trying to do the same to me, aren't you?" He went silent, his face twisting with frustration. For a moment, I saw the real Luke, the one behind the charm, the facade. A man who would do anything to get what he wanted, no matter who he hurt in the process. He took a step toward me, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "Watch yourself, Nico. You're in over your head. Mila doesn't know what she's talking about, and neither do you. Walk away from this, and we can still salvage things. If you don't. He let the threat hang in the air. But I didn't back down. If I don't? I echoed, my voice stronger than I expected. What are you going to do, Luke? Try to ruin me? Drag me through the mud like you did to her? He smirked, his confidence slowly returning. You don't want to make an enemy out of me, Nico. You think you're ready for this fight? You have no idea what I'm capable of. I took a step back, folding my arms and forcing myself to remain calm. Oh, I know exactly what you're capable of, Luke, and that's why I'm not letting you get away with it. With that, I walked out, leaving him standing there, fuming in the middle of the office. But I wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting with the board members, presenting them with Mila's folder. I went through everything, meticulously laying out each piece of evidence, every accusation, every line of fine print. They listened in stunned silence, their faces growing graver with each new revelation. When I was finished, they exchanged glances, then nodded. The vote was swift and unanimous. Luke was removed from his position on the spot, and all access to the company's accounts was immediately frozen. He'd underestimated my resolve, and now he was out of moves. But I still wasn't done. Luke's reaction to his firing was nothing short of explosive. He called me every name under the sun, swearing he'd get even, that he'd make me pay. And true to his word, he immediately began trying to trash my reputation, calling clients and spreading lies about me, hoping to take down the company along with him. What he didn't know was that I'd been prepared for that, too. I'd already alerted our key clients, letting them know that Luke was no longer with the company and explaining the situation. With Mila's evidence backing me up, most of them supported the board's decision. But some were wary, there was too much uncertainty, and they were uncomfortable being associated with a company that had harbored someone like Luke. That's when I had an idea that, if executed right, could save everything. I reached out to Mila. Meeting Mila in person felt surreal after all the messages and that intense confrontation in the lobby. She was nervous, understandably, but she looked stronger now, a hint of resolve in her gaze. I realized then just how much this whole ordeal had cost her, how much of herself she'd lost to Luke's manipulation. And in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't expected: hope. Nico, she greeted me, extending a cautious hand. Thank you. For believing me. I shook her hand warmly. Mila, you don't have to thank me. I'm just sorry it took me this long to see the truth. Luke was a master at hiding things. But I think we can finally make this right. She tilted her head, curious. What do you mean? I want you to help me expose him, I replied. You've got the evidence, you've lived through it, and you're the only person who can truly tell this story. If we go public with this, if we reveal the full extent of what he's done, then he won't just be out of this company. He'll be finished, period. Her eyes widened, a flicker of fear crossing her face. You want me to go public with everything? I nodded. Think of it this way. By sharing your story, you'll protect countless others from falling into his trap. And maybe you'll finally get the closure you deserve. She took a deep breath, clearly weighing her options. But after a long pause, she nodded. Let's do it. In the days that followed, Mila and I worked together, compiling every piece of evidence, every email, every financial statement that showed Luke's web of lies and manipulation. We reached out to a well-respected journalist known for investigating corporate scandals, and after reviewing the evidence, they agreed to publish the story. The article hit the front page, detailing every sordid detail of Luke's schemes. Mila's voice was the heart of the piece, her story exposing the real man behind the facade. It was brutal, raw, and utterly damning. Luke's reputation crumbled overnight. His name was blacklisted in every major industry. The clients who'd wavered? They came back to us, grateful that we'd taken swift action to remove him and reassured by the transparency we'd shown. The merger was back on, stronger than ever. As for Luke, he tried to fight back, of course. He threatened lawsuits, went on social media rants, tried to spin the narrative any way he could, but it was all too late. The evidence was overwhelming, and no one was interested in his story anymore. He was toxic, and everyone knew it. One day, a few weeks after the article dropped, I received a call from my mom. Nico, she said, her voice hesitant, almost apologetic. Your brother, Marcelo, wants to talk to you. I let out a long sigh. Marcelo had been eerily silent since everything went down. I figured he was laying low, hoping to avoid the fallout from his association with Luke. But a part of me had hoped he might have changed. What does he want? I asked, already knowing the answer. Well, he's going through a rough patch, she said, her tone all too familiar. He's in a little trouble, financially speaking, and... I didn't let her finish. Ma, I said firmly, I'm done with this. I won't be his safety net anymore. I'm building something real for myself, and I can't keep getting dragged down by his choices. There was a pause, and for once, She didn't argue. I think she finally understood. The family loyalty that had always been used as a chain around my neck was gone, and I was free. As for Mila, the day the article went live, she called me with a tearful but relieved voice. "Nico," she said softly, "I don't know how to thank you. This is everything I needed to move on. He took so much from me, but now I have my life back." I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders, too. "You deserve every bit of that freedom, Mila. You helped me see who he really was, and I'll always be grateful for that." After everything, I'd gained not just a future without Luke's shadow, but an unlikely friend in Mila. And as I stood in my office, looking out over the city that had once felt like a battleground, I finally felt at peace. We'd won. I'd won. And as for Luke? Well, he got exactly what he deserved. Somewhere out there, he was scrambling, desperately trying to piece together the wreckage of his life, and honestly, I couldn't think of a more satisfying end for a man like him.